We call this meeting to order. Please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mayor Mixon,
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Billingsley,
Present.
Councilor Curry.
Here.
Councilor Howe,
Here.
Councilor Humbert.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Before I call for a motion to approve the agenda, there need to be a couple of changes. Item 2 from the consent agenda needs to be removed. That wasn't supposed to come to council. And on new business, on item B, it should read Resolution 2023-41 granting a waiver instead of ordinance granting a variance. So I'm going to call for a motion with the amendments. Bill?
I make a motion to approve the agenda with the removal of item 2 under the consent agenda and item B under new business, which should read discussion approval of resolution 2023-41, a resolution granting a waiver to the 300-foot spacing requirements for a restaurant to serve alcoholic beverages on the same property as a church.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Next, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda, which consists of the July 2023 council meeting minutes?
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Is there a second?
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
And then we'll go right to requests and responses from the audience, and we have just one.
Yes.
Hi, Mr. Honey.
Good evening.
We'll give the floor to you, sir.
The 2 meetings ago, I came and complained about the road and only had 3 minutes, so it took a while to complain.
Okay.
So I wanted
I don't know if you
to,
set your 3 minutes.
I
here.
wanted to follow up on the streets and visit with you about some solutions.
Okay.
Looking at other villages, similar size, our village has a ton of roads, as we all know. We need 3 crews. And I'm in the construction business, anybody here that doesn't know that. We have 1 crew right now that maintains the roads. We need 3 separate crews. We need a construction crew every summer. That crew is just out rebuilding damages done the previous year, the previous winter, and catching up. We need the normal grader crew that's out every day anyway, and he has to be assisted with a water truck. Because if you're gonna grade, you have to bring water and you have to bring the roller. And I think we need a 3rd crew. We need a 911 emergency crew for potholes. I know everybody here drives the same roads I do, and there's just a ton of potholes. And if the crew's over on the east side working, they can't free up to go fill 1 pothole. That crew could be a bobcat, a small dump truck, and material, a 2-man crew. So there's some of your solutions. And until we get 3 separate crews out on the, especially during the summer, and when I say summer, I'm talking April, right up till the first snow. And I don't know how it's gonna happen and how it budgets, but that's what you need. So there's some solutions. So as you talk your budget hearings coming up and stuff, maybe you can figure that out. On slash, I personally have cleared 7 lots here in the last 20 years. So I know all about the slash program. I was here when it was implemented. I've said all along we should chip on site. Why bring the problem? As we now know, we're just taking one problem from one area and bringing it down here. And until the village can prove to the citizens that they can manage the slash program and not be years behind in dealing with the piles, they should not raise any fees. And I think that's been tabled, but I'm not for sure. And I'm on the fire protection committee, and I'm excited that we have a new focus on dealing with the slash. We have the fire chief involved and his crew. We have to make it so convenient and so easy for our citizens to thin their lots, or we're not gonna be fire safe. We have to really, and if we raise the rate, fine, but we have to make it and keep it convenient for them. So that's all I have. Thanks,
Okay.
Mayor.
Thank you. And you'll be happy some of these things are already being addressed.
Yes.
You
I've
set
got,
solutions,
yes,
and that'll be out very quickly.
good.
Yes, thank you. Oh, I turned it over. I don't believe there's any announcements or proclamations. And we'll go for governing body reports. Do any of the council members have reports tonight?
It's not a report, but I have a question.
Okay.
I know we have a new auditor,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm wondering when that contract will come to council.
It's not intended to come to the counselor, and I will explain my rationale behind contracts in my report. That's my report this evening. I'll go into a little more detail.
Okay, I'll save the rest of my questions
Okay.
until then.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
Thank
think it
you.
should be.
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So with that, then we'll have the manager's report and we'll turn the floor over to Morris
And
Madrid.
just be about contracts. One of the things that I've undertaken since I've gotten here is a rewrite of all of our administrative procedures. One of the things that has come up in the last few months in regard to the prior audit was the age of those administrative procedures. Most of them were 20 years old. Last time they were redone was 2004. Many of them were outdated and unnecessary. I've got about a dozen of them done. I have probably 4 or 5 that are just completely out the door. We had one that would designate parking in front of the building and referring to rails and landmarks that are no longer there. But one of the ones that I did want to talk about because it's, why would you do that? And it's the one in relation to contracts that comes to the governing body for approval. Now, as just a basic premise to all this, contracts in a sense can be a lot of different things. They need to contain 3 basic elements of contracts: an offer, an acceptance, and a consideration, an exchange of value. That can be a purchase order for a bucket of bolts. Governing body doesn't need to deal with anything like that, but it can be considered a contractual agreement. The village, by statute, is required to comply with the New Mexico Procurement Code. The code defines processes that need to be followed. It doesn't address levels of authority and levels of approval. That's left to the local governing body. There are different levels of procurement. There are small purchases that are usually, they can be made smaller, but not bigger by the local body, under $20,000. Depending on the level, you should have verbal quotes to get best price. Some of them must be documented in writing. For example, if they're over $20,000 but less than $60,000. $60,000 is a key number because anything that's going to be over $60,000, the legislature defines this number. They adjust it once in a while. About 12 years ago, it was 50 or 60. There's above that amount requires a formal process for projects, for goods, materials, items that are tangible. That's an invitation for bids. We put out a list of things, or even a building, that we want to accept bids on with very specific criteria. Building plans, road plans. We could put it out for inventory items that we keep in the closet, office supplies. Materials for our water systems to keep in stock. And those are granted to the lowest bidder. Those are not negotiable. And remember again, that's about $60,000. Also, for professional services or other services, we need to do requests for proposal. We solicit proposals. This is normally for professional services. I'll use engineers as an example. We want engineers that are qualified to prepare plans for road improvements, building structures. Architects, same thing. Requests for proposal are negotiable. And you can hire more than one contractor for that. Doesn't have to be just one. They don't have to go to the lowest bidder. But again, the threshold is $60,000. The administrative procedure that I issued was that everything $60,000 or above comes to the council for formal approval. So why is that? Well, because it required a formal process. If it doesn't require that formal process dictated by the code, then it doesn't require a formal approval. That is intended to be that simple. There are, like I said before, the code does not define the levels of approval. Some smaller places require an approval level by the council at 30 or 40 or 50,000. City of Santa Fe just changed theirs. Their council doesn't want to see anything less than 200,000. So it depends. It really depends on the level of activity and the types of contracts that you have. That was my rationale by making it the exact number that's required by the procurement code for a normal process. The audit contract, Councilman, is a little different, and it was under the 60,000 because the formal approval that's required for audit contracts comes from the state auditor. We could approve it here in this room by unanimous vote of everybody, and if the state auditor doesn't approve it, it doesn't mean anything because audit contracts are special. Auditors have to be licensed, of course. They also have to go through a peer review. They also have to be on an approved list by the state auditor. That's one of the very few, I'm not sure of any others, that have a special requirement to have a contract awarded. Audit contracts are unique in that sense. But I just wanted to kind of give you an overview of my rationale in having that threshold for items that come to the council for approval. That was my report.
Thank you. So I appreciate that. In our village code, it says the duties of the village council are to manage and control the finances of all property, real and personal, belonging to the village. Now, the administrative policy that you're talking about certainly did need to be updated. It had a number of things in there that were no longer pertinent, and I commend you for doing all that. There is one that I'd like to see come to council, and that's the one on contracts, so that we can discuss it. Do you think we can do that?
I can request an agenda item for discussion, direction, and possible action.
And I also agree that there's a threshold that we don't want to hear about. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much.
We should be transparent, Councilor. That's my report, Mayor.
Thank you. I think we have one staff report. Is that right? Just one?
Yes.
Chief Bobbitt, we turn the floor over to you, sir.
Thanks, sir. Yes, sir. 3 minutes.
Madam Mayor, Councilman, Manager Madrid, Clerk Fox, thank you for your time. So far to date, we have ran 257 calls for 911. Wildland deployments, we've been on 9 wildland deployments, approximately $175,000 billed back for reimbursement so far this year. Speaking to the slash earlier,
Oh, he's
There-
gone.
Yeah. There have been 121 permits issued this year. Approximately 15,000 yards of the old slash is gone. We have received about 8,000 yards that we burned in the ACI burner. And then we've chipped about 500 yards and we've given away 300 yards of chips. We have donated about 15 truckloads worth of good firewood that we've gotten through the slash. And we're working with Firewood Angels to donate those to people in need. We do have a large chipper that was delivered recently. Today, we're working on the training and safety policy to be in place prior to any use of that, but we will be able to use chipping on site as an option. If you know of anyone that wants to take chips, send them our way. We'll be more than happy to donate them to a good cause or whoever wants them. Yes, we are working with the dog park directly to give them chips. I think they wanted up to like 6 inches, but we are working with them. And then the sign should be viewable today, actually. We got them posted and marked, so there should be very clear delivery for the slash.
The directional
The
signs?
directional
that
signs.
came in?
Mhm.
Great.
The only thing as far as, and that the primarily goal was that is to help mitigate anyone going to where they're used to going. It's to direct them to the new direction as far as where to drop all the chips off. And then Kit Carson, I did speak with them. They are still promising a large chipper and manpower to help remove some of the old slash. There was a delay with the construction and then getting DOT clearance for a wide load to come here at all
Through the canyon.
through the canyon. I did recommend going around. They said they're working on it, but there was a delay, and that's kind of what the delay was. As far as fire and EMS, we are training every Wednesday night. We started including Eagle Nest as part of our training. I will touch base on Eagle Nest here in a little bit. And we also started shift training as well. So every time the guys come on for 2 days and off for 4, those 2 days on, they're also receiving a training as well. Some events that are coming up, we have a hose testing, which they come and they test all of our hose and make sure it's good, make sure it can withstand pressure. That's coming up this week. Eagle Nest. Eagle Nest has lost their director, and then their interim director left as of yesterday. As of right now, they have one licensed provider, and they're not comfortable in the back of an ambulance yet. And so Angel Fire is helping cover Eagle Nest. We have set up a reimbursement schedule with them that we're billing back monthly. So we will get some of that cost back to us. Radio tower, we are still waiting on 2 quotes now. I've spoken with Advanced Communications and Code 3 to get a new radio tower installed. We do have some partial funding that we do have. Also working out with Moreno Valley and Colfax County to see about additional funding as well. Grants, Julie and I actually attended a very beneficial CWDG workshop this last Friday, where we kind of were educated a little bit more on what they were looking for. So hopefully we can utilize that information we gathered to apply for a little bit more grants for the projects within Angel Fire. We are putting in for the YCC grant. That was a grant that we used to receive yearly. During the time when there wasn't a fire chief, we kind of let our requirements go as far as reporting. So we had to wait a year to reapply. So we are going to reapply for the YCC grant. And we'll also be applying for the New Mexico Fire Protection Grant. What that grant does is it allocates funds for a special project within the village. So last week I had everyone kind of give me their top wishes and wants as far as slash Wildland, Fire and EMS. And so I'm prioritizing that list. And once I prioritize that list, I'll be applying for a grant for the #1 priority to get funding for it. Fire inspections, I like to always say life safety is the number one goal for any thing we say or do within fire inspections. The fire inspector received a list of 105 properties this last week from Picasa, so he's going to be busy for a little while. And then emergency management, I am in another training this week. It's planning for emergency operations. It'll be from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. I'll get done Thursday, but this is the second of 5 classes in obtaining my emergency manager basic academy certification. I did offer an admin position earlier today. So we're just working on details. Hopefully she'll be accepting soon. And then I also hired a full-time EMT basic firefighter. And I stand for any questions.
Chief, is this a CWDG or CWBG?
D.
B?
D as in
D.
Delta. Defense grant. So
Can you
it's
explain that a little bit more?
yeah, of course. It's a community wildfire defense grant, and this is actually a new funding opportunity as of last year, based on the Biden administration and kind of some money that's set aside. The Cimarron Watershed Alliance is actually going to be applying for this grant for us on behalf of us. They were beneficial, they got a grant last year for $8 million.
Right.
So no reason to reinvent the wheel. So they volunteered to help us get that grant, and what we'll be utilizing that grant for is bidding mostly. We are also going to try to obtain some funding for the radio tower for that as well. There are kind of some stipulations, and me and Julie are working on like sifting through all those stipulations to see what we can actually qualify for and what we can apply for.
So this might be outside the purview, but as you start to go up the pass, a few weeks ago, there was a lot of clearing on the left-hand side.
Mhm.
Can you tell us who was doing that?
I do not know who was doing that. I know Carson's been doing a lot of clearing. I know contractors are doing a lot of clearing, and I know US 64, that whole construction, part of what they were doing was getting rid of some slash off the.
Well, obviously, it helped for the future.
Mhm.
So, thank you.
Of course.
No? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Pass that down before I get lost. We don't have any committee reports tonight, so no old business. We go into new business. The first is a discussion approval of contract change order to increase in contract time of 21 days due to rock excavation. Is there a motion, please?
Make a motion for discussion approval of contract change order 2, increase in contract time of 21 days due to rock excavation.
A second,
Second.
and we turn the floor over to Julie Coulter.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, Manager Madrid, and Clerk Boggs. Before you have a contract change order number 2 with Gene Emulsions. This is for Country Club St. Andrews Way. They got into excavating and found that pretty much the whole way is rock. So it took them quite a bit longer to excavate that rock, and thus the change in the contract to reflect that additional time. I'll stand for any questions.
Is the additional financial impact covered?
Yes, it is, sir.
It's just not budgeted,
Just
just what
not
it says
budgeted.
here, but it's covered.
It's covered by our grant, by the NMDOT funding, so it's covered in there. We haven't,
No, that's the funding source you have listed here.
yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Once we vote on this, then I have another question for you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Keith?
Mayor Pro Tem Billingsley.
Aye.
Councilor Curry.
Aye.
Councilor Howell.
Aye.
Councilor Humbert.
Aye.
Motion carried. What was
Next.
your question?
So a couple weeks ago, there was another line of some type cut over there in that construction area.
Mhm.
And I know the first one was several weeks ago. What can you tell us about the most recent one?
things buried in the ground do not match what's in paper in your hand. That's all I can say. They get down in there and they start thinking they're cutting in a certain area, that everything's clear, get down there, not so much. It's like spaghetti.
So when we bring in the line locate people, I guess they're not finding everything.
Well, you have water lines that are not necessarily the villages, they were put in before the village was incorporated, and they're not on any kind of map. So once they start excavating and get in there and they end up cutting something, they're like, what does this go to? Where's this from? Where's the shut off for this? So you have issues like that.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And rock.
And rock, yes, and lots of rock.
Thank you. Next, we have discussion approval of resolution 2023-41, granting a waiver to the 300-foot spacing requirements for a restaurant to serve alcoholic beverages on the same property as a church. Is there a motion, please?
Make a motion for discussion and approval of resolution 2023-41, a resolution granting a waiver to the 300-foot spacing requirements for a restaurant to serve alcoholic beverages on the same property as a church.
Is there a second?
Second.
Can we turn the floor over to Santos?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council, Manager Madrid, Clerk Boggs. First start off that my apologies. For 20 years, every item I bring to council is always an ordinance where I normally do work. So in this instance, I believe you corrected it as a resolution. That's just how I'm programmed. This is in compliance with the amendment that you guys just adopted at your last meeting. Chapter 60, Article 6B, Section 10 of state statute allows a restaurant, just a restaurant, the opportunity to seek a waiver if it's within 300 feet of either a church or a school. And so we didn't have a process for an applicant to come forward, but with the code amendment you guys adopted and making it its own section and provision for council action brings us here tonight. The applicant is here. This is something that they need in order to continue the process and getting their license approved by the state. We also need to submit a letter to them to say that they're in the right zoning district that allows retail sales, not just for a restaurant, but also for alcohol sales too as well. So this is an alignment with all those steps that the state allows the village purview to consider, and stand for any questions you may have.
You might add in the packet that both churches have given.
Yes, ma'am. So when we started this process, the church at the end had provided a letter. We were waiting for the second letter from the I think Moreno Valley, Moreno Valley Church. They submitted their letter, and I believe that was in your packet. Yes.
Any questions? I think we covered it this morning.
Yes, those were the only two. And
It's in the
we,
code.
yeah.
No, childcare moved out.
So the state had just listed a church and a school with the 300-foot spacing. And then this is unique because it's a shopping center and you have multiple tenants. And in this instance, you have two tenants that are churches within 300 feet because it's on the same lot.
Anything else? We'll call for a vote. Thank you, sir.
Sure.
Mayor Pro Tem Billingsley.
Aye.
Councilor Curry.
Aye.
Councilor Howe.
Aye.
Councilor Humphrey.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. The next we have the discussion approval of a bid award to A&Z Handy Andy. Is there a motion, please?
You're good. Make a motion for discussion approval of a bid award to A&Z and
Is there a second?
Second.
We'll turn the floor over to Morris Madrid.
Mayor and council, this is a good example of a process to require procurement code procedures. This project, the plan has been developed for a while. There's phases to it. I'm sure you are all aware of it. This particular phase was published as an invitation for bid. No response. I think that was in April or May. The code requires it to publish again. So there was a publication for another invitation for bid. Still no response. So then after two no responses, the code provides that the village may reach out to any vendor that is willing to provide the service and negotiate a price. That's what happened in this case. The architect was involved and they negotiated the price that you see in your packet of exactly $60,000. And the plans and the bid that was submitted, negotiated, is in compliance with the architect's requirements. And we ask for your approval.
Any questions? No? Thank you, sir. Oh, did you have a question?
No.
Okay. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Billingsley.
Aye.
Councilor Curry.
Aye.
Councilor Howell.
Aye.
Councilor Humbert.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Next, we have a discussion approval of resolution 2023-40, a resolution for the reimbursement of actual expenses related to a wildland firefighting and/or training. Is there a motion?
Make a motion for discussion approval of resolution 2023-40, a resolution for the reimbursement of actual expenses related to a wildland firefighting and/or training.
A second?
Second.
I'm going to turn the floor over to Chief Bobbitt.
Madam Mayor, Councilman, Manager Madrid, Clerk Boggs, just requesting reimbursement of actual expenses related to a firefighter that was on deployment. This unique one was actually, he got sent on deployment, had his credit card pre-auth. With the change of the new fiscal year, his card actually expired while on deployment. He needed to fill up the unit, and so he ended up using his personal card while he was on deployment. So just requesting reimbursement.
Good question. Thank you, Dax. No? Thank you, sir.
Mayor Pro Tem Billingsley.
Aye.
Councilor Curry.
Aye.
Councilor Howell.
Aye.
Councilor Humbert.
Aye.
Motion carried.
And with no more discussion, we call this meeting adjourned.